we're going to talk about Heaven. Heaven
Heaven
by Marc
is a
Jacobs.
place
Damn right. So,
where nothing. Okay, go ahead.
Heaven is kind of everywhere right now. It's like just insane. It's insane to me how big this brand has gotten. This, I don't know. I mean, technically a diffusion line, right? Do you want to enlighten us on what Heaven is, who Marc Jacobs is, anything like that?
I guess maybe. So
Please.
obviously, or maybe not obviously, Marc Jacobs is a designer. He came up in the 1990s in New York City. I pretty sure he was the creative director for Perry Ellis, and that was when he did like his first like actual like grunge show.
Mhm.
People accredit Marc Jacobs for introducing grunge into fashion, which at the time was seen as like anti-fashion. Um, had his own label, Hot
Mhm.
Deal. He was the first clothing creative director at Louis Vuitton.
Mhm.
And he now just kind of chills. He kind of hangs. Sometimes he gets fits off if you like pay attention to the internet. He seems to like Rick
True.
and Rick Owens. And if you guys are watching on screen, there's a hint to that. Um, and I don't know. I guess like how would you describe Marc Jacobs in his entirety? Very New York kind of
Man.
brand. And
Yeah.
he has always been like connected to kind of a rebel or youth, maybe even very 90s energy. I think that
Yeah.
has kind of permeated his work. He often does stuff that's kind of postmodern, like
Mhm.
saying like the Marc Jacobs bag thing. Um, and yeah.
Yeah, my way into Marc Jacobs before I ever knew anything about clothing at all. My first like real girlfriend that I had as an adult,
Hmm.
Marc Jacobs was her favorite designer, and this was kind of
Interesting.
like an alt punk type of girl. You know what I mean? So that
Okay.
kind of tells you something about the vibe that he was known for and kind of helped popularize. But I feel like uh when I came into fashion, he was maybe at his lowest point.
Mm.
If I had to say, it feels like
Yeah.
there was a dark period, a fallow period there, you
Yes.
know?
If and I don't actually, I think I would have to do more research to actually
Mhm.
make sense of this. But I feel like what happened with Marc Jacobs is he became accredited, credited in the high fashion world.
Mhm.
And the thing with like, I think this is a New York and American brands thing. When they get some money, they go, I don't care about the art. I want
Yes.
money. And then they immediately
Yes.
do a million diffusion lines. And like
Mhm.
Marc Jacobs, I think a few years ago was as spread out as possible. Like they had
Yeah.
multiple lines, they were just pumping out anything. And I think that for a period of time, people, I think, didn't value it as much.
Yeah.
But
He was
like
doing
they
like
have,
the Michael Kors a little bit.
yeah, he was very much Michael Korsing it.
Right.
But they've since truncated a lot of those collections.
Mhm.
And I've seen, then there was like the, I forget what it's called, but there was like a diffuse, not a diffusion, but like a higher level diffusion he started doing as of recent. Can't even think of the name
Is
of
that
it.
like the things or no? Because I know there's like a certain there's like the Marc Jacobs kind of like runway, and then I feel like there's a level where it's like the Marc Jacobs, and it's like the tote bag, the sweater. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sorry. I was just trying to respond. We had this one guy in the comments, Serious
Oh,
Slav, and he was trying to troll us, but I don't want him to leave. Like, don't leave, dude. Keep trying. Keep throwing insults at us. He was saying that maybe we don't like girls, which, as
oh
we
no!
know, in fashion is
Oh,
is a very serious offense. And we'll get to it. I just wanted you to hold that idea because we were going to talk about
right, right.
whether or not I like girls.
That's interesting though. If we can take a moment on this, where do you think the troll came from?
Um, I don't know. I mean, it could have came from anywhere. Is he still here? No,
I
Ice
don't know.
Spice is hot. I
Oh,
don't know. I mean, Meme Saint Laurent, maybe.
oh, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe.
Um.
So
Okay. Sorry. Let's get back onto Marc
all
Jacobs.
good. So I think when I came into fashion, he was at this low point, and then things start kind of bubbling back up. You see more and more people talking about it, more and more influencers, celebrities getting off Marc Jacobs fits. And then I remember when he launched Heaven, which is his latest, smash hit diffusion line. And I remember thinking it was a bad move. I
Why?
remember thinking like he's finally getting it rolling. He's making his name for himself as like a high fashion designer again, as opposed to the Michael Korsing it, where you're just
Yeah.
flashing your name on everything. I thought a diffusion line was not the right move at that time. And this is why I don't get paid big bucks to consult in fashion, because it was a great idea, apparently.
Dummy.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about it. I mean, there was the Fashion Lover. He did a video maybe 2 months ago or something like that, talking about it. It's definitely buzzed about right now. And I think it's interesting. I will say that at least aesthetically and like on the face of it, I think it makes a lot of sense. If like Marc Jacobs is doing what kind of appears like a 90s rave inspired type of aesthetic, like Y2K brand, that seems like it's 100% up his alley.
Right.
That's like his jurisdiction originally. But there's mixed reactions. There's mixed reactions.
Yeah, he did pretty recently. He did like a Deftones collaboration. And I was like, damn, that is the most fitting thing I've ever seen in my life. It's genius,
Yeah. And do you want to like kind of, how else would you might describe the aesthetic and like the brand, if there's anything else you can throw in?
The aesthetic is, I feel like it's maybe equal parts grunge and Y2K as well. It's kind of like straddling both of those, and we'll get into this in a second, I'm sure. You see Michelle here, very grungy, almost like Kurt Cobain sweater, hyper distressed.
Yeah.
And even just off to the left here, Ice Spice, that is not grungy. That's Y2K, big platform boots like stars, kind of almost
the slip dress.
Yes. Yeah.
100%. And can you just like just because obviously we prepare for the podcast, but sometimes maybe we don't. What is the price point? What is the price point for this stuff?
So the price point, let's check it. I don't want to get anything extra wrong, but I would say it's like accessible premium fashion would be my thought. I'm guessing a sweater would be what, like $250.
So kind of like the brand we were just talking about, the Italian brand.
Random Identities, right?
Random Identities, yeah, priced in the same way. Is Heaven on Essence?
What?
Oh no, dude, you're wasting our
time.
Sorry for all of our listeners. Right now, Kilian is frantically searching for a Heaven.
Where are their stockists? Okay.
No.
Sweatshirt, a Heaven sweatshirt is $135.
Okay. So
very accessible.
If we're talking clothes, like this isn't like Balenciaga, it's $1,000 plus.
No.
But it's also not the Gap or like Uniqlo or something. This is serious cash, but it is feasible that a human being might spend $100 on a piece of clothes. So like that's kind of where it's positioned.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, like, what do you think is behind kind of its rise in popularity? Or we can talk about the fact that Michelle LeMay, the spouse and kind of mentor to Rick Owens, is a model in some of this editorial imagery. And Michelle LeMay, in case you're unfamiliar, you're not looking, she's like a 200-year-old Moroccan woman. And I'm convinced that she's actually a pharaoh who is immortal and never has died.
I believe it.
But she is, she gets around in fashion circles. She's well known because of her influence in her relationship with Rick Owens.
And I think successful as like an artist in her own right as well.
100%. And I want to make that clear. It would be wrong to call her a muse.
But she also is.
Yeah. And the ASAP Rocky album, the one after Long Live ASAP, where he's like this, he has his hands on his face. That's Michelle LeMay inspired then. So it's really curious or interesting to see her modeling for another brand, and what is a brand seemingly targeting young people and is also like
Yeah,
a diffusion line. It's weird.
it's
I'll say
very
that.
I it makes me wonder, like, is it a play to get additional cachet in, like, the luxury hype beast market? Because there's also an interesting thing happening. I was just thinking about this earlier today where, all of, like, the guys that were buying, like, off-white Nike Dunks, they were really obsessed with that. Suddenly, they were like, they discovered Rick Owens, and they were all about, like, Geo Baskets and Ramones all of a sudden, like, overnight, it felt like.
I'm cool
So
with it, you know.
and I'm good with it. And
Yeah.
so I feel like there's a market, a budding market for a certain type of high luxury clothing, and it makes me wonder if it's a move to kind of, get more cred in that realm, or is it just Marc Jacobs really likes her and appreciates her and has a relationship with Rick Owens as well, and it's just, friends being friends. I don't know.
I think it has to be that to a larger extent.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that if we're thinking of this as like a gateway drug,
Mhm.
congrats to Marc Jacobs. If that's the angle, like get
Yeah.
Zoomers zooted out on
Mhm, mhm.
Heaven, and then eventually they'll start
Zoomers
buying.
love zoot suits. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. That's like every TikTok
Right,
has
right.
they're in a zoot suit. They're like, I bought this. It's originally from the 1940s. It's traditional. But maybe that's the angle.
Mhm.
I guess the bigger question is, and one of the reasons we wanted to bring it up is the brand, more than we've seen for a while. Marc Jacob is getting a lot of buzz from this brand.
Yeah.
What's the reason? Is it just because Y2K has been popular? He has a lot of credibility making that, or maybe a
Mhm.
lot of competency, and it's just supply and demand? Is there something else kind of behind its rise in popularity?
I mean, so this is right. It's a marketing campaign. All of these people were paid for. You can see the list down here: Ice Spice, Lil Uzi Vert, Liv Tyler. It's an absurd lineup. So clearly, these people did not all do this out of the kindness of their heart for their kind feelings towards Marc Jacobs.
You don't think
They're
so?
no, they're getting their bag.
Oh.
So
Why do I keep buying things when I see
I
little Uzi
know,
Vert wearing them
I
then?
know.
I thought he I thought he was giving his
Why do you think I have this
official.
hoodie?
Oh, no. Oh, no. So you're telling me that people do things for money? Yeah.
Mm,
So there's obviously a successful and probably expensive marketing campaign, PR
mhm.
marketing campaign behind it. But, I've seen firsthand people will throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at things and it
Yes.
goes nowhere. So there is something actually clicking.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think if I had to put a wager on it, I would say that Marc Jacobs, good designer, the
mhm.
design is good. I like Heaven when I see it. I'm like often like, "Oh, that's cool." You know what I mean?
Okay.
Uh, but also he just happened to catch a very good moment for him. He just
Yes.
found a very good moment for himself. I'm sure I think LVMH owns it or owns a good stake, right?
Yeah, I'm almost certain LVMH owns Marc Jacobs.
Yeah, giant
So then,
conglomerate. They own Marc Jacobs or some, majority of it. I'm sure they have tons of analysts on these things that saw, oh, Heaven's picking up steam. Heaven's doing good. Heaven's hitting some trends, and then they throw gasoline on the fire with big, big marketing spend, and it turns into this, you know,
yeah,
yeah.
and that's how it's made. I mean, what do you
That's how
think
it's
is
made.
what do you think is the what's the so what of this? Do you think that Heaven or Marc Jacobs will start to buid more notoriety? I'm trying to remember specifically
Mm,
the premise of Fashion Lovers video, but he was basically arguing that Heaven is a ripoff of another brand. Like
mhm.
it's a full one for one uh, uh, replica friend,
Yeah.
and I guess like that at least is that is a mark, especially if you want credibility among like true fashion
Mhm,
enthusiasts. But it does seem like Marc Jacobs, who was big star in fashion world,
mhm.
kind of became a little too little too commercial. He's coming back up. Is this
Yep.
kind of his revival, or is this a flash in the pan?
I think it's both. I think it's definitely helping him, and I don't think it will really hurt him. But I also think it's destined to disappear at some point. I think it is riding a trend, and I don't necessarily know if it'll be able to. It remains to be seen, but I would be surprised if it really manages to kind of weave its way through ongoing trends to keep its momentum up. I just think look through the history of diffusion lines, like Love Moschino and all of
Mm-hmm.
these things. They all have their moment. It feels like, and there's just a very elite few that managed to make it through that battlefield. But so I think it will fail eventually, but that it's
Okay.
helping him and that it won't hurt him in the long run.
I'm sure when he's like when he's wiping his tears with all the millions of dollars he has,
Right.
I'm sure he'll be fine. I'm sure Marc
Yeah,
Jacobs, he probably like
exactly.
has like a gigantic penthouse in Soho. He
Oh,
has every
100%.
he has every kiss boot they ever made.
Mhm.
Um, and this is one thing I will say about Marc Jacobs. He's
Mhm.
always come off as a fashion enthusiast. He's always come off as somebody
Yeah.
who loves fashion, like as a person as well as being a designer of fashion. And that's I like that. I like that. And because you see some designers, and I
Oh,
get
yeah.
it. At the on runway shows, they're running around. They're
Mhm.
like doing hit somersaults. I don't expect everybody to be dripped out, but some designers are really just focused on the craft of designing, and it's
Mhm.
not about like personal expression for them. And Marc Jacobs, he is about designing, and he wants to get a fit off, and
Yeah.
it's
He
okay with me.
partakes.
Yeah,
He partakes. He's a guy that gets high on his own supply and other supplies.
yeah.
You know what else I also
Speaking of,
like about Marc Jacobs?
yes.
Good hair.
Oh,
Man's
does
got
he?
he's got a nice mop, you know
Well,
what I mean?
hold on. Before you even keep going, I know this is a segue. Pull up a picture of Marc Jacobs.
All right, all right.
I want to see if he has good hair. And for everybody just listening, I will describe in detail what Marc Jacobs looks like.
Please, please.
Okay.
Da, 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 da. I
Man,
just
the
do like
man.
headshot?
Okay. I
I
like
just
how
go
you spelled
head,
it.
but okay.
Okay, okay. He is a Caucasian man. That means white.
Mhm.
Middle-aged, but he looks like he either gets work done or moisturizes. And there's
Mhm.
that. Save that for a second. Um, I would say he has good hair. I mean, he is kind of he's got hair. Yeah, he's got a full head of hair. A lot of people experience male pattern baldness,
Right,
and he
right.
hasn't.